Good morning. I'm 39 years old. I was raised in the India of 80s and 90s. You can almost say that I'm a typical product of those 2 decades. I did all that was expected out of people of those 2 decades. I studied engineering, and today I do nothing remotely connected to what I studied. My father is 71, and my son is 7. Occasionally, we go out for a meal together. These are nice and happy moments, mostly. And I say mostly for a reason. Because you see, my father tends to read out the menu aloud and the prices, especially the prices. You can almost sense a wonder and certain anguish that he has when he looks at the high prices for the ordinary dishes. My son, on the other hand, wants to order as many dishes as he can. He also tends to read out the menu aloud. I guess these things run in the family. But with one certain difference. He tends to add only to the prices. So palak paneer, 450 rupees only. And my problem is I tend to agree with both of them, with both their perspectives. And this is something that people who grew up along with me in those 2 decades often go through, these paradoxes. And this is not an isolated example alone. There are many situations that our generation goes through where we find these kind of conflicting emotions. Because you see, we are what I call the transition generation of India. We are Gen-phased. One phase looking back at our socialist analogous past, and the other phase looking ahead at our consumerist digital future. Now, transition generations anywhere in the world or any time in history go through one kind of big transition. This could be political, from a dictatorship to democracy. This could be economic, from a closed economy to an open economy. Or it could be social, from an unequal society to an equal society, from a theological one to a secular one. Or it could be technological, from manual to automated. Transition generations are unique for their place and time in history. They see both the past and they see the future. And in that sense, their influence transcends generations. And we've seen examples of this in the past. The baby boomers, the generation that came in the US right after the World War II, saw both the surplus that they saw right immediately after World War II and the deficiencies that they saw during the Great Depression or during the World War II. And this generation defined certain traits of American society, which was a mirror image of what that generation was about. The can-do spirit, because they saw a man being put on the moon, the optimism, and the belief that America is the greatest country in the world. And those emotions still dictate the US society. Or if you were to go back into history, the generation in Europe of 17th century that saw the scientific revolution, where a whole host of inventions and discoveries were made, that generation paved the way for what is called the Age of Enlightenment, where philosophers, thinkers, and writers created what is the basis for the current modern society, a society based on principles of equality, liberty, secularism, and things of that kind. So transition generations are important. Their influence transcends generations, and understanding transition generation makes you understand the society, its fault lines, and its future shifts. To cut it short, what I'm here to tell you is that I and your parents, possibly because most of you are predominantly a teenage audience, belong to the transition generation of India. We are important, and believe it or fail, I'm here to actually urge all you teenagers to understand your parents. Now, my generation, the transition generation, went through 2 big transitions during our times. One was economic one. We moved from muddled socialism to maybe muddled capitalism of today. And we went through a technology change wherein we moved from this analog past to the current digital, current or the digital future. And these are big transitions. If I were to give you just an example, it took about anywhere between 5 to 7 years during my time when I was growing up to get a telephone line. It was a big occasion. If you got a telephone line, you actually invited neighbors over for a party. And from that to actually having more telephone lines in India than toilets today is a big transition. And we've actually gone through that kind of transition. So it's important to understand, if we were to truly believe that this generation is influential, they are already in positions of leadership, they will be in positions of leadership in the society in the future, to get to know this generation better. How do they think? What are their influences? What are their biases? What are their conflicts? And what do they think of this change that they have seen through? And how are they actually influencing the future generations? I have studied this area for a period of time. My only qualification being I belong to this generation, which is not much of a qualification. But I do not use the word belong lightly. I'm a card-carrying member of this generation, deeply steeped in its mores and its understanding and influences. And over the last few years, I've tried to understand what actually influenced our generations as we grew up and how that is actually making us react to things that we see today. So not unlike the physicians of the past, I have tested my hypothesis on myself, and that's what I have come here to share with you. So what have I learned? First, we have this duality going on in our heads between scarcity and abundance. For good or for bad, you can't get scarcity out of our heads. Because the mental economic model with which we view the world is based on scarcity. Our childhood were scarred with limitations of all kinds. Sugar, cooking gas, oil, engineering seats, they were all limited. So we are forever scared of things getting over before we can access them. Which explains why when the boarding gate is announced at the airport, we all rush in. We have a boarding pass, we have a seat assigned, nobody's going to take away the seat. But the moment we see others going towards the gate, our scarcity instinct kicks in. We feel something might get over there, and we should possibly be standing at the queue as well. Because who knows, why take a chance? So we can't process abundance. We see it all around us now. We revel in it as well. But somewhere at the back of our mind, we believe this is transient. This will get over. And therefore, we are holders of all kinds. I have every single belt that I've used in the last 15 years. I never throw away chargers of my cell phones. And I guess I speak for a whole lot of people of my generation. What does this mean in terms of our society and its future? Firstly, I believe this ideal of equitable society and equitable wealth distribution is going to take some time because of people like us. We do not believe that we have enough, and therefore we won't give away easily. If we believe we have enough for ourselves, we'll start hoarding for our next generation. We like philanthropy. We believe philanthropists will be great guys who will actually come in and help all of you. And we'll admire them from afar. But we won't be able to do the same thing beyond a certain tokenism. And this will hurt all of you because you've grown up in relative abundance and you will find this inequality around the society quite painful. But you might not be able to budge us beyond a certain level. So that's one. The other one is we will continue to be a nation of great savers. We are already a fairly high savings rate country. And I don't think so that's going away in a hurry because we've learned saving. And one way or the other, we've already inculcated in you the habit of saving, which is a great thing actually because it actually buffers you from economic shocks of the future. So no matter how consumerist we might seem to get, and people might keep asking and keep worrying about the degree of consumerism in the society, the savings rate in our country is not going to go away in a hurry. So that's one. The other one is this idea of losing our social identity versus the revivalism that we see around us. The we've possibly seen the maximum erosion of individual social identity over our generation. The classic markers of social identity, which is caste, subcaste, community, language, these have been on a decline. I'm not saying they have gone away. They are still very much there. But I guess they are on a terminal decline. And the reason for this, there are two interrelated reasons. One is nuclear family and the other one is urbanization. Nuclear family has meant that you do not have the extended family to celebrate or help you out, of uncles and aunts and cousins, who often tend to raise you in a certain way which is unique to your family or your community. Nuclear families do not have that access. And urbanization has meant that you actually depend on your neighbor, your colleagues, your friends, more than your family. What this has meant is that we have become more and more homogeneous. We have less biases and less prejudices than our past. And this, I believe, is a very positive influence that we have on the society, that we have created and that you are actually inheriting. The surname of the person sitting next to you means very little to you. It did during our times. And we'll continue to see this homogenization increase because there will be lesser friction for inter-community, inter-language marriages, and the products of those marriages will be even less worried about their own social identity. And this is already happening all around us. All of us pretty much eat the same kind of food, we celebrate the same set of festivals, and we pretty much have become monolingual. We speak in English most of the time. As much as our generation has led to this does not sit very easily with us. We are constantly in doubts about losing our identity. It's a burden of guilt that we carry. And that burden of guilt will reflect itself in this revivalist piece that I'm talking about. So think about all the sudden urges that people will have of sending their kids to Vedic mathematics classes, or to learn the mother tongue and learn the script of it, or this great desire to take a train journey back to where your grandfather was born or was living. And we'll continue to push that. You will find it amazing that we sometimes do not follow the customs that we are asking you to follow because of this burden of guilt. And in some ways, we have already indoctrinated this in such a subtle manner that you don't even know. The three Khans of Bollywood, which actually were heroes of my generation, they made their debuts when I was maybe 12 or 13. We have very nicely implanted them as heroes of your generation. These are 50 plus people. You actually should be finding your heroes for yourself. But our idea of hero, and we continue to perpetuate that myth that these are great actors who will continue to be heroes. And I will not be surprised that at the age of 70, we'll still be buying 1,000 rupee tickets to actually watch these guys. If you don't believe me, check out Rolling Stones and what the prices of their concert tickets are. Because the baby boomers still want to watch Rolling Stones in the US. Lastly is the attitude towards risk. Our attitude towards risk will be in constant conflict with yours. Because we were born, or we were raised in possibly the lowest risk appetite society possible. Engineering and medical were two safest professions. Didn't matter if you had any passion for them, you had to study them. Our burden of insecurities are so high that even if we have started seeing people who take risk starting to succeed, we are not able to easily shake that off. We are doing it a little bit on the entrepreneurial risk ability, but not at all, not fully within the society. Because we've not seen enough examples. And we will try and hurt you, or not exactly hurt you, but we will try and stop you from taking risks. In fact, the only risk that we will possibly allow is if it has worked elsewhere in the world. And then we can customize it in India, which is what many Indian startups are all about, which is just a customization of a concept that has worked elsewhere in the world. We will be more than happy with incremental change, not big disruptions. Because the official motto of our generation is why take risk. And therefore, the society is going to continue to have incremental changes and not a big disruption, which might or might not be a great idea, but that's how it will turn out to be. So transition generation has seen the past, it has seen the future, and it is the bridge between what I call my father and my son. And this bridge and its influences, its attitudes, is going to in some ways collide with the choices that the next generation is going to make. And this conflict is a fascinating conflict. It will direct the course of our society, for good or for bad. I am squarely in the middle of this, and I hope today you get to know that you also are right in the middle of it. Thank you.